The key things that a company should do to mitigate their product recalls exposure is first and foremost to recognize that they have an exposure, start planning around all those scenarios, and be ready when there's an incident. And of course, a robust supply chain management process is extremely important in terms of how they select their suppliers, how they manage the supply contracts in terms of the allocation of responsibilities and potential financial losses in the event of an issue, and also to bring in external consultants who have the experience to really stress test those plans and the processes to confirm that the procedures in place are effective. The general mistakes that clients tend to make in assessing their product recall exposures are generally that one, they completely fail to recognize that there is a potential exposure, so they tend to go uninsured altogether. Secondly, when it comes to the limit that they're going to purchase, usually the limit is far too low versus the actual financial exposure, and that usually is down to the fact that they've not been completely honest with the maximum probable loss analysis, or it could be down to the fact that they lack internal data to really benchmark the MPL against real-life scenarios. And finally, usually clients tend to take a very narrow view when it comes to product recall insurance purchases, in that they usually would look at a specific contract or look at a specific supplier and look at a very, very small set of loss scenarios rather than taking a holistic view, which is probably the more realistic view, with the world being more interconnected nowadays, especially in the supply chain. The factors that a company should consider when it comes to limit analysis, to me, first and foremost, is an honest and transparent assessment of their maximum probable loss. So in their risk assessment, they should come up with real-life scenarios benchmarked against real-life losses to assess what's the potential financial damage on a particular company in the event of one of those losses. Secondly, to me, benchmarking against the turnover of a company and looking at the potential costs a company could incur in defending, recalling, replacing, and conducting the communication process globally if a product is distributed widely in the real world is very important. And also, from a contractual management point of view, you also need to assess what sort of contractual liability you have assumed in some of the supplier contracts that you've signed, and benchmark your limits accordingly. And last but not least, keeping abreast of the latest loss data in the world, and using those loss data as a reference point would be a much more meaningful exercise to conduct versus just looking at what limits your peers are buying.